Hello and welcome to the video. Today I'm going to be telling you the best program that you can use to build muscle. I'm literally directly going to be giving you my 4-day, 5-day and 6-day per week programs that I came up with and that I use with my clients at Elite Fitness Limited. Now, if you do not have that many days free, I'm also going to be releasing another video called the most efficient program that you can use to build muscle. It's going to be the same concept as this video, however, it's going to be my 2-day per week and 3-day per week plan. If you only have time to train 2 or 3 days a week and you want the most bang for your buck, that video will be for you, but I suggest watching them both and deciding which of the programs is best for you. You can actually adapt some of the programs within this video to be 2 and 3 day per week. So watch both, see which program suits you best. But without further ado, let's get to it. So last quick thing, I'm going to be giving you all of the programs first and then I'm going to be explaining how you use them. So I'm going to be covering how you rotate different exercises, how many sets you should be doing, how many reps you should be doing, how long you should be resting, how long each block of training should be. I'm going to cover that after telling you each of the different days per week programs. So stick around to find out actually how to use the programs, and don't worry if it sounds confusing at first and you're like, what does he mean when he says a leg push? That doesn't help me. You will find out after, but for now I'm going to just go straight into what the programs are. So starting off with my 4-day per week plan, it is an upper lower split. So you will do 2 upper sessions and 2 lower sessions. They'll be split throughout the week like this: upper, then lower, then some sort of rest, upper, lower, rest, rest. You can jig the days about a bit. I'll explain that when it comes to customizing. But the first upper day starts with a flat or a decline press, then a vertical pull or a row with the option for an extra shrug, an incline press, a rear delt fly or a side lateral, a tricep exercise and a bicep curl. Then your first lower day will start with a leg push, then a hip hinge, then a quad extension, then a hamstring curl, then a calf raise, and then a bonus lower exercise. I'll explain what that means in a minute. Then your second upper workout will begin with a vertical pull, then a press, then a row with the option for an extra shrug, then chest flies, some sort of chest fly variation, then a tricep exercise, then a bicep curl, and then the second lower day is actually the same as the first one. With the upper days, the first upper day is slightly more geared towards push, and the second upper day is slightly more geared towards pull and back and biceps. So that is the 4-day per week program. Then we're actually going to cover the 6-day per week program next. That is a push-pull legs, push-pull leg split. So for your push day, you will start with a flat or a decline press, then an incline press, then chest flies of some sort, then a tricep exercise and another tricep exercise. After that, then you'll move on to your pull day. That'll start off with a vertical pull. Then you'll do a row with the option for an extra shrug, then either a rear delt fly or a side lateral, and then 2 bicep curl variations. And finally, you'll move on to your legs day, which is the same as the lower day in the 4-day per week split. It starts off with a leg push, then a hip hinge, then a quad extension, then a hamstring curl, then a calf raise, and then a bonus lower exercise of your choosing. Then we have the 5-day per week split. This is where you'll do an upper, then a lower, then rest, and then you'll do push-pull legs rest. This is a hybrid of the 4-day per week and the 6-day per week plans. That's why I covered those 2 first. But you'll basically be doing the first upper and lower of the 4-day per week plan, and then you'll be doing a push-pull legs of the 6-day per week program. So I'll cover that just to recap again, but you'll start off on your upper day with a flat or a decline press, then a vertical pull or a row with the option for an extra shrug, then an incline press, then either a chest fly or a rear delt fly or a side lateral, then a tricep exercise and a bicep exercise. Then your lower day will be the classic lower or leg day, and it'll be the leg push, the hip hinge, the quad extension, the hamstring curl, the calf raise, and a bonus lower exercise. Then you'll go on to your push day, which is a flat or a decline press, then an incline press, then a chest fly, then a tricep exercise, and finally another tricep exercise. Then you'll have your pull day, which will be a vertical pull, then a row with the option for an extra shrug variation, then a rear delt fly or a side lateral, then a bicep curl, and finally another bicep curl variation. And you'll end with another leg / lower day. It's the classic leg push, hip hinge, quad extension, hamstring curl, calf raise, and a bonus lower exercise. So what do I actually mean when I say a leg push or a hip hinge or a vertical pull? Well, I'm going to go through each of the categories of exercises now. So each of the different groups of exercises, what do I actually mean when I say a vertical pull or a leg push? Well, let's go through them all. To start off with, very simply, a press. Obviously, that is some form of upper body press. If I've specified for it to be a flat or a decline press, do that. If you want it to be an incline press, pick an incline variation of a press. But a press could be anything. It could be a normal barbell press. It could be a dumbbell press. It could be a wide grip press or a close grip press. It could be a camber bar press or a Swiss bar press or any specialty bar press. It could be a machine press, some sort of converging chest press. That is my favorite exercise. It could be a shoulder press, any type of press. That is what it means when it says a press, and obviously if it specifies either flat or decline or incline, do that sort of a variation of that type of press. Then we have a vertical pull. So a vertical pull is a variation of 3 fundamental exercises, either a pull / chin up, a lat pull down, or pull throughs. So you can vary the different grips on each of these, particularly on the lat pull downs and the pull ups. It could be neutral grip, it could be wide grip, it could be reverse grip, which are basically chin ups for pull ups. You can vary each of the different grips within these as well. So you do have lots of variations of vertical pulls, but the base variations are some form of pull up, some form of lat pull down, and some form of pull through. Then we have rows. This is obvious, it's any type of row. So it could be a barbell row, it could be a dumbbell row, it could be a single arm dumbbell row, it could be a landmine row, it could be a low row, it could be a seal row, any type of row of your choosing. And there's the option to add a shrug variation. So this particularly comes in with the barbell rows and the dumbbell rows. Once you are done with your row set, you can stand up and do shrugs as a superset. Now, I'd never program just shrugs instead of a row. I believe that rows are a more effective exercise for training your back, but I think shrugs can be great as an add-on to particularly barbell and dumbbell rows. If you stand up when you can get no more rows, you will be stronger with shrugs. You can add some extra time and attention and intensity. Maybe if you're a beginner, you don't want to do that, and you don't have to do that if your variation is barbell rows or if it's dumbbell rows, but it's a nice add-on if you'd like to. That is why it is written as an optional add-on within the program. Then we move on to a chest fly, a rear delt fly, or a side lateral, some sort of movement from the shoulder. You can pick any variation. So the chest fly could be a dumbbell chest fly or a machine chest fly or a cable chest fly, sometimes called cable crossovers. The same with the rear delt fly. It could be a reverse cable crossover / cable rear delt fly. You can do low versions, you could do high versions, whatever body position you want. You can do machine versions, you can do dumbbell versions. The same with the side lateral. With any of these, you literally just pick a variation. Generally, you're just changing the type of resistance on it, and you'll pick whichever variation you think you need to work on the most. So if you're wanting to work on rear delts, choose the rear delt flies. If you're wanting to work on the general side delt, choose a variation of side laterals. If you're wanting to work on your chest more, choose a chest fly. Sometimes it is specified and the delt ones are separated. So in some of the programs, it will be a chest fly specifically. Choose a chest fly variation. And then in other programs, you'll have the option of all 3. Then we move on to a tricep exercise. Again, this is really obvious, but this can be something like a skull crusher, a JM press, a tricep pushdown. It could be some form of tricep extension. It could be head tucks. It could be dumbbell rollbacks. You have loads of different tricep exercises in there. You have some that are more compound movements like the JM press and the skull crusher. And then you have some more isolated movements. You could do overhead tricep extensions with the cable and the rope. You could do a single arm overhead tricep extension with a dumbbell. Any sort of tricep exercise. Some of them are going to be more compound and some of them are going to be more isolation work, but they're all focusing on the tricep. Pretty obvious category again, but I needed to cover it. And then the next very obvious category is bicep curls. You just pick a curl variation. It could be an easy bar curl. It could be dumbbell curls. It could be hammer curls. It could be reverse grip curls. It could be a single arm dumbbell preacher curl. It could be normal preacher curls. It could be concentration curls. It can be any version of a curl that you'd like. If you've seen my top 5 bicep exercise video, you'll have seen that I believe that curls are the best exercise for your bicep, and that is why I always say a bicep curl variation. On the programs where there are 2 bicep curls, one after another, you don't have to do 2 different variations. You could just do, for instance, 5 sets of one variation. You can just do 3 sets of one variation, but to round out your training, and because you had extra time in there, I added 2 bicep curls, the same with the tricep exercises, depending on which program you're following. Then we move on to the lower days. Now these are more complicated categories. These are the ones that you probably need clarifying. To start off with is a leg push. This is the most in-depth category, but it literally is any time that you are pushing away with your lower body. So it could be a leg press, it could be a front squat, it could be a goblet squat, it could be an elevated heel squat, it could be a hack squat or a Smith machine squat, there could be split squats or a pistol squat. There are so many different variations, but fundamentally you are pushing the ground away from you. It could be the classic barbell back squat, can't believe I didn't even say that, but any sort of leg pushing exercise, that is what I mean by leg push. Then hip hinge, we are trying to focus more on the posterior chain, the glutes and the hamstrings. So it could be something like hip extensions, it could be good mornings, it could be RDLs, it could be hip thrusts, it could be GHDs, or it could be Nordic curls. You can do different variations of those, of course, like banded Nordic curls or banded GHDs. If you need the assistance, you can do banded versions of the others, and you can also do supersets. If you watched my top hamstring videos, I love GHDs, and what I said I love to do is superset them with hip extensions. So you do GHDs until you can't do anymore, and then do hip extensions. Whatever you choose to do within this hip hinge movement, you pick some sort of variation. It could be the superset, it could just be simply one of these exercises, and you'll rotate through these within your different blocks of training. Then back onto obvious exercises, but a quad extension could be any type of quad extension. It could be a machine quad extension. It could be some sort of cable quad extension setup you've got, or some banded quad extension setup. Or you can actually do sissy squats instead of quad extension. They do a very similar action about the knee, and it's a very similar feeling, except it is just much harder, it is much heavier, but you can use sissy squats instead of quad extension. Then we have hamstring curls. Again, this is obvious. You can do regular hamstring curls, seated hamstring curls, you can do cable hamstring curls, you can do banded hamstring curls, you can do lying hamstring curls. It's some form of a hamstring curl. You could do single leg versions of these as well. I forgot to say that with quads, but obviously you can do single leg versions or dual leg versions. You'll rotate those different variations. Then you have calf raises. Again, this is obvious. You can have elevated calf raises, you can have machine calf raises, you can have Smith machine calf raises, you can have seated calf raises, you can have bent knee calf raises, you can change the way that you load, you can do like banded calf raises. Whatever variation you want, you can rotate those. And then you have the bonus lower exercise. So this is a bit of a mystery category, but it's for anything that you want to do to round out your training. So if you're wanting to target your glutes a bit more, you can do a glute kickback. If you're wanting to round out the side of the glutes, you could do a hip abduction. If you're wanting to round out the inner thighs, you could do a hip adduction. If you're wanting to round out your shins and you want to work on your calves, you could do tibialis raises for the front of your shin. Or you don't have to do this bonus exercise. You can just add more sets of the first 5 exercises. If you wanted to work on quads in particular, you might do 5 sets of quad extensions instead of the regular 2 or 3. You don't have to do this bonus exercise, or you can add in another variation. If you're wanting to work on calves and you want to do some sort of standing calf variation and a seated calf variation, go and do that. It is really a free-for-all. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to put any variation. If you think that you can train more intense in the first 5 exercises, if you have less exercises within each session and you want to have a higher intensity but less exercises, go for that. There are really no rules. So, now that you know each of the different categories of exercises, there are different principles that are crucial to how this training works. The first one is about exercise selection. So, the name of the game is variation. You want to pick and choose as much variation as you can. So for example, if there are 2 of the same type of movement within either a single training day or within a week, you want to make sure they're different. If you have 2 leg pushes, for instance, don't do barbell back squat both times. You could do barbell back squat and then you could do Smith machine squat. And what I also recommend doing is trying to vary the type of leg push you do, even within the category of leg push. So for example, the barbell back squat is a free weight squat and the Smith machine squat is a fixed plane of resistance squat. So I wouldn't do hack squat and Smith machine squat because they're 2 very similar exercises. And I wouldn't do barbell back squat and then elevated heel squat. They're both free weight exercises. I would maybe do barbell back squat and Bulgarian split squat because that is a unilateral exercise. That's a single leg exercise. Maybe you're doing a hack squat and pistol squats. One of them is a fixed plane of resistance exercise. One of them is a single leg variation. Even within the category, you want as much variation as you can each week. Pick exercises that you like, but you should be rotating through the exercises with things like lat pull downs. If you have 2 vertical pulls, one of them could be a pull-up, one of them could be lat pull downs. If you're restricted by your equipment and you only have access to, for instance, lat pull downs, one of them could be a close reverse grip lat pull down and one of them could be a wide grip regular lat pull down. You'll rotate them through different cycles, but the name of the game is trying to vary your exercises as much as possible. If you have 2 of the same grouping of exercise, try and pick things that target different areas. Maybe you do a bilateral exercise, so some sort of classic both side exercise, and a unilateral exercise where you do one side at a time. The second principle is sets. How many sets are you going to do? I advise doing 2 to 3 sets per exercise and no more than 20 sets total per workout. Now, some of these workouts have more exercises in, particularly the shorter day programs. The longer day programs have less exercises in per day, so you can do at least 3 sets per exercise, and you could push to 4 sets. I wouldn't really go higher than that. I definitely wouldn't go higher than 5 sets. I think that you should be training intensely and just applying the same stimulus for many, many sets. I would prefer you rotated the different exercises, and I don't think that you should be doing more than 20 sets per workout. You shouldn't be in the gym for 2 hours. You should be getting through your sets quite quickly. That brings me on to rest times. My advice is to rest as long as you need to in order for you to be at the same strength level. Now, if you've never rested short, you might find that your strength drops off even if you rest 2 minutes, if you're used to resting 5 minutes between sets. try and cut down that rest time. I would not rest more than 3 to 4 minutes per set. Maybe on your larger compound movements at the beginning of the workout, if you have a barbell back squat, you could rest a bit longer. But in general, I would cut down your rest times and aim for about 2 minutes. I wouldn't though do 30 seconds because your strength level is likely to drop off dramatically. If that is the case and you are feeling more fatigued throughout the session, don't be afraid to drop the weight to hit your rep goal. If you've been doing lat pull downs and you're doing 3 sets and the first set was fine for a set of 12, the same weight on the second set, you barely got a set of 12. The last rep was sort of a cheat half rep. Don't be afraid to drop the weight stack down a bit for the third set instead of only hitting 8 reps. That is training very differently. I advise adjusting the weight and trying to hit your programmed reps. You can also add more intense styles of training. I am loving drop sets, for instance, at the moment. So you can program these on some specific exercise. I wouldn't do these on every exercise of your workout. I'd do a maximum 2 drop set variations per workout. So don't do drop sets on every single exercise, and particularly choose one with machines. They're really nice to do. Things like lat pull downs, it's so easy to change the weight versus trying to do a drop set on a barbell back squat. That is not going to work. You're going to have to put the weight down, quickly pull plates off the side. Unless you've got 2 training partners to do it, I wouldn't advise doing that. And you can buy drop set pins. This is another quick side recommendation, but I have recently acquired drop set pins and I am in love because I am able to do higher load variations, and I might do that for 6 to 8 reps on a lat pull down. Won't be able to get any more. Drop the drop set pin instantly and whack out another 8 reps. So I'm amassing 15, 16 rep sets of volume, but half of those are also at a much higher load. I do love the drop set pins and they just feel so much harder and more intense to train with. So you can program those as well within each of your cycles. Then we have reps. So the guide for reps is, if you've seen my busting through muscle plateau video, I say that you should vary your loads within your training. I think this is a ridiculous thing within the fitness industry in general, is people are like, you should only do sets of 8 for hypertrophy, they're the best, or you should do sets of 12 for hypertrophy, that's the best. You don't have to pick a rep range. When you went into the gym for the first time, the gym didn't say, right, pick how many reps you want to do for every exercise and only do them forever. You have to stand by it and you have to say that every other rep range doesn't work. What a load of rubbish. So I would vary your reps all the way down to sets of 3, all the way up to sets of 20. So within these programs, the first exercises in general are compound exercises. If you've got a more mixed day, you might have, particularly on the full body days, you might have a upper body compound exercise, then a few upper body isolation exercise, then another lower body compound exercises. On the compound exercises, so I'm specifically on about the presses. So if you have some sort of upper body press, if you have a vertical pull or a row, if you've got a hip hinge, or if you've got a leg push, if you're doing one of those categories, I'd advise doing reps between 5 all the way up to 12, but I generally do sets of like 8. Try and get your myofibrillar hypertrophy, try and get a few heavier sets in there within the compound exercises. I said all the way up to 12 because, again, this is a matter of opinion. If you prefer sets of 12 and you want to amass more volume, and in general you've been training lower sets, maybe what's going to help drive you to improve more is to start doing higher sets on all of your exercises, apply a new training stimulus. But if you always train high, you always train sets of 12, try some sets of 5 on the squat, load it a bit heavier. You're going to have lots of time afterwards on the isolation exercises to get a specific pump as well. I have found this to be very effective in my training recently, and that's sort of what the drop set achieves both of. If you have a drop set where you've programmed a set of 6 of heavier weight plus however many extra reps you can get, you sort of get that heavy compound set of 6, and then you get maybe 10 extra reps after that. it works very well for amassing both volume. You get to have it both ways basically, which is fantastic. But when it comes to reps, on these compound exercises, I'd advise being between 5 and 12 reps. And then with your lighter isolation exercises, I advise being between 8 and 20 reps. You can go really high volume on these with 20 rep sets. You can go heavier with sets of 8. I don't advise trying to hit triples on this, and I did say do reps between 3 and 20. Just to clarify, on the compound lifts, you can do sets of 3 on like a barbell row or a barbell back squat or some sort of movement like that. I do think that they are also applicable and are very useful. I would generally keep your work though for the compound movements between 5 and 12 reps, and for the isolation movements between 8 and 20 reps. You can vary this stuff up. If you want to have a heavier training block, you could have all of your compound movements 5 to 6 reps and all of your isolation movements 8 to 10 reps. And then you could have a more voluminous block where you have many of your compound movements at 10 reps and many of your isolation movements at 15 to 20 reps. It is up to you, but I advise to use all rep ranges, and with each of your blocks, change it up each time. So that brings me on to the length of block. I would advise doing a block for as long as you are progressively overloading and as long as you are seeing progress. Now, if you're 5 years into training, this is obviously harder to notice your progress block by block. There's not a sort of cutoff of do the block until you've gained 3 pounds of muscle and move on, because that's never going to work for the people who are 10 years into training. In general, I would do blocks for 6 to 8 weeks. You can throw in deloads whenever you feel the need. You can plan deloads, so you could have an 8-week block where the 4th week every week is more of a deload. I find for hypertrophy work, this is less important unless you are really overrun, in which case I'd try and either optimize other lifestyle factors. It's likely to be not recovering properly in terms of sleep and nutrition. But the other thing is I would just dial back the intensity of your training. Maybe you are training a little too much. You shouldn't need to deload from hypertrophy training that regularly. So the blocks, however, can be, I advise 6 to 8 weeks, but you could go up to 12 weeks. I wouldn't go past something like 20 weeks. For beginners, you're probably still making improvements. What you've got to understand is if you really like your exercise variations and you don't want to change, you've got into your routine, you don't have to make big changes. If you've been doing barbell back squats and you love doing a free weight squat, do elevated heel squats. They're very similar. You don't have to suddenly go from that to split squats. You don't have to change within the groups too much. If you like the lat pulls you're doing and it's time to get to the end of the block and vary up, and you're thinking, oh, I'm meant to now change to like pull-ups or pull-throughs and I don't like them as much, maybe just change from close like V-grip lat pull downs to a wide grip lat pull down. It is still a very similar exercise. The whole point of these blocks is that you are applying a similar training stimulus every time. That is the point of these programs, but you just change the specific exercise up. So the last thing to say is that you can customize any of these programs as you wish. You can change up the order of each exercises if you want. In general, I think the order is great because you are starting with compound lifts. I very much like that system, and then go on to isolation movements where you are trying to target each muscle group individually. Some people, however, prefer the pre-exhaust approach. Maybe you want to do quad extensions before your squats because you want your quads to fatigue most within squats. In general, I'd just say pick a more quad dominant version of a leg push, then pick elevated heel squats, but you could do whatever you want. You can customize things as you wish. If there's any body part you really don't want to train, you can drop that. The famous example of this is Jay Cutler was saying as he was young, about 20, he didn't train legs for 2 or 3 years, and that was because they were such a dominant body part. I still advise training all of your body, but if you maybe only want to train 3 days a week, you could adapt the 4-day upper lower rest, rest. You could get rid of one of the lower body days if legs are a strong point, for instance, and have 2 upper days and just 1 lower day. Or you could take the 6-day per week split and make it 5 days per week by doing push, pull, legs, rest, push, pull, rest, in which case you're hitting your upper body 4 times per week and your legs only once. Whatever you want to do, you can customize the program to fit you. If you have a specific body part you want to work on more than others and you find that some exercises are just targeting the wrong body part, you can swap them out. If you want to do more glute work rather than quad work and there are loads of quad extensions and no glute kickbacks, swap the quad extensions for glute work. You can do whatever you like. Customize the plan as you see fit. That is it for today's video. I hope you did in fact enjoy the video. If you did, drop it a like, drop it a comment, subscribe, click the bell. There is a link in the description to my coaching services. If you want guaranteed results, if you like the sound of these programs, but you don't want to have to bother training it yourself and you want guaranteed results, I do offer a 60-day money back guarantee. If you're not completely satisfied with the service that you are provided with, you will get all of your money back, no questions asked. I am that confident that you will love the training. Thank you very much for watching and have a great day.